Welcome to the Sectional Education Podcast. I'm Lisa, and I'm so glad you're here. In today's podcast, we're going to focus on how to support educators, how they navigate those triggers behaviors, that tend to often lead to burnout. And as leaders and coaches, we want to make sure that you continue to foster a culture of emotional safety along with well being. And so Stephanie is joining me here on this beautiful day, as long as my co-worker Leila, all the way virtually. And so we're going to begin this important conversation. And so I'm going to go ahead and turn it to Leila because it's going to be a really good topic because we're going to have a chance to talk about how emotional impact of behavior tend to be very challenging and discuss how can we, which is leaders and coaches, is able to respond with more empathy along with strategic support and making sure that as a program, we're able to have sustainable practices. Leila, I'll pass it to you.
Thank you, Lisa. So when we're talking about the impact of stress, right? Let's start with the reality. Behavior challenges are one of the top contributors to teacher stress, whether it's frequent disruptions, defiance, or emotional outbursts. These moments can feel really overwhelming to teachers, especially when they are persistent and happening throughout the course of the day. But here's the key. It's not just the behavior itself. It's the emotional toll that it takes when teachers feels unsupported, isolated, or unsure of how to respond. So as leaders and coaches, you have the power to shift that narrative. When you validate teachers' experiences and equip them with tools and strategies, you reduce the emotional toll, the load, and you help build their resistance. Simply acknowledging that today was rough, but tomorrow will be better. Or saying to a teacher, I really saw you use many different strategies to help Stephanie in transition today. I saw you really putting your best foot forward. Simple statements like that mean a lot to a teacher when they are feeling stressed. So now let's talk about triggers. So, behaviors that trigger an adult reaction vary from person to person. But some common ones that we tend to see on a regular basis are escalations during transitions or unstructured time. Students who challenge authority or basically just ignore any directions that teachers are giving them, as well as emotional dysregulation, especially in children, in trauma impacted children. So, your role is to help teachers recognize their own stress levels, right? Their own triggers, their own signals. Is their heart racing? Are they feeling frustrated or helpless? These are the cues that that behavior has triggered them.
Mm.
So, encourage some reflective practice. Have them ask themselves, what's happening in when to me? What's happening within me when this behavior shows up? That awareness really is the first step toward intentional responses towards children's behavior.
You mentioned those triggers. I remember when I was a teacher, one of my triggers was the spitting. Having a child spit at you, it made me feel so uncomfortable, but I know the child was expressing a certain way. However, I knew how to quickly respond to making sure that first that the child is safe and making sure that I quickly go take care of myself, to clean myself up. But I understood, the reason why the child did that. That was what they were communicating. But that was one of my triggers. So, Layla, I'm just curious, what are some common behavior triggers that you have seen in educators?
So I can speak to, again, the triggers are going to be different based
Oh,
upon the
yes.
person's experience. But
Hmm.
for me, it's always been whining. That
Oh.
is one of my biggest triggers. So, as a teacher, when I was in the classroom, I had my colleagues. We all knew what each other's triggers were, those behaviors that would trigger us. So, when they arose in the classroom, we used teamwork and a collaborative effort so that no one teacher would feel overwhelmed by a behavior that triggered them. So that's one of the ways, and I handled it as a teacher in the classroom. And I think about my nieces and my nephews now, and that when they whine, I have to take my own deep breath because it still triggers me, right? And I have to say to them, Titi doesn't understand you when you whine. I know you're feeling something really big right now. You've got a big emotion. So let's take a deep breath and now let's talk about it. So, kind of reframing it so that when we are addressing children, we're
Mm-hmm.
addressing the behavior that's being is exhibited
Yeah.
and not the child, because that should be our focus.
Wow.
So again, triggers vary, and every person needs to be able to recognize which are those behaviors that trigger my own trauma or my own response.
And so I think about too the burnout because as educators, we have so much responsibility. I think about teachers doing observations, all these things happening. However, these behavior triggers can be very overwhelming. And if it's happening, be in the classroom, probably a teacher might have 15 to 18 to 20 children in the classroom, Stephanie. And I'm thinking about, wow, trying to identify all those individual ones, behavior and temperaments and so I wonder, what would be something that coaches and leaders can support teachers in order for them to avoid that burnout, Stephanie?
Well, one of the things that I remember when I was in the classroom, Lisa, over 15 years ago, I was in an early childhood special education classroom and I experienced a lot of burnout. These children were 3 to 5 years old and they had various abilities and disabilities. And one of the things that really kind of stuck out to me when you asked me that question was a quote from Dare to Lead with Brene Brown. If we have any Brene Brown fans out there, I love Brene Brown. But it was strong back, strong front, wild heart, and making sure that you were there to be resilient. This quote kind of anchors me through seasons of burnout and even some rediscovery that you have just in your life because we as educators and leaders, we have to find that balance, that strength with openness, understanding how we can define how we show up in some of the most challenging moments, even with the children in the classroom.
Yes.
So let's talk a little bit about the strategies that I used. So when stress arises in the classroom, we need to recognize our regulation and understand how regulation is with us. Coaches and leaders need to understand our nervous system tone and what that means. Modeling co regulation and staying calm, grounded, and responsive. As a leader, it helps teachers to do the same thing. So when administrators and leaders hold steady, we also give permission to the other teachers to find their own calm. Finding that understanding of how to be clear. Being clear is actually kindness. Because sometimes when administrators are all over the place and they're not consistent with that information, that uncertainty also breeds that uncertainty in a teacher. So unclear expectations or emotional reactivity instead of clear understanding creates confusion and anxiety with teachers. So it's important that administrators bring that clarity through steadiness, calm, and understanding. So here are a few tools that can be used in the workplace. Of course, like behavioral prompts or redirection scripts to reduce uncertainty through tough moments that teachers may have in the classroom. Using, of course, emotional check-ins with mindful pauses, because sometimes having an administrator come in when you know that you have several behavior challenges in the classroom, just to come in and say, how's it going? I know that you've got several behavior challenges and things that are going on. How are you doing today? That makes a difference. It also helps reset the nervous system for that teacher because it provides a means of safety. So, and just as importantly as normalizing the struggle. So saying, I know that it's hard in here today. I know that. Just know that you're not alone. We can figure this out together. So that's important to hear as a teacher when you have those behavior challenges in the classroom, that administrator or even another colleague comes in and says those things. When educators feel supported instead of judged because they can't quite deal with the behavior challenges in the classroom, they shift from survival to growth. So that sense of partnership is a game changer, Lisa.
And listening to you, Stephanie, it made me brought up that I had an opportunity to observe a teacher in action. And the teacher was in the classroom for almost 2 weeks and trying to build her relationship with the kids in the community. And she was trying to get the kids' attention, and the kids would not listen to her at all. You could tell that she was overwhelmed.
Mhm.
But one thing that I appreciate what she did, and I was observing with her supervisor, she told supervisors, I need 10 minutes. And the most beautiful thing that I just heard you just said about self-regulation, the supervisor quickly stopped what she was doing and she quickly took over while the teacher took her 10-minute break. And that's beautiful because as a program, we also have to be mindful that we check in, like you just said right now, but at the same time that we create an environment that teacher just said, you know what, today I don't feel good, but I need you to come check me regular basis. Today I might need some extra 5 minutes breaks, and to create an environment that allows their voice to be heard and allow them to be able to express themselves. So Stephanie, what are some strategies that programs can be very intentional in keeping that mindset to support teachers in those moments?
Well, it's important to know build that burnout doesn't happen overnight. It builds that tension, that resistance, that resentment, even sometimes in the classroom. I know that when it was a difficult time and we've had challenging behaviors, it was hard to go in that classroom that next morning knowing what was going on. It's important to build that sense of calm because educators, teachers, coaches, administrators, everybody needs to have a sense of feeling seen and not undervalued. So to truly address it, we have to build up a culture of well-being amongst all of us, administrators, top down, a place where people feel grounded, supported, and able to recover, where they understand that, this is a safe place. I'm able to let you know that this is going on and this is hard. So finding a place where you can really kind of get your footing, positioning yourself with readiness and strength and also some compassion as an administrator is important. Having that posture of grounded leadership. If you are an administrator, you may have had some experience in the classroom, so you understand, but you also have to have the courage to care. Yeah, all the understanding, all of the administrative responsibilities are there, but having that courage to care about that teacher, dealing with whatever is going on is also important. That same groundedness is what we want to cultivate in our programs. So we need to look at celebrating small wins. I know that it seems insignificant sometimes, but those small wins may be exactly what that teacher needs that day. So paying attention to that and looking for those small wins is important. Really fostering an environment of encouraging peer support. Letting others know, hey, let's tell somebody that you appreciate them today. Say thank you to a colleague. Prioritizing wellness. Now, that's hard sometimes in early childhood settings because we're looking at ratio, we're looking at making sure that there's enough staff that's following up, but prioritizing wellness is so key. And being an advocate for planning time, mental health breaks, and accessing counseling if it's available in your program. When we cultivate and create environments that honor both emotional safety and professional growth, we don't just reduce burnout, we restore hope, and we restore where educators feel safe and they want to stay in the profession.
So, wow, this was really good. Thank you, Lena and Stephanie. I do want to say that here calls your time to put in action, leaders and coaches. Now, we have heard your present matter. Your empathy matter. Your strategies matter. So let's commit to supporting educator, not just with tools, but with the heart. You kept saying the word hope. You said the word hope. Because when we care for those who care for the children, guess what? We're going to build a stronger school and community along with supporting our families as well. So thanks for joining us today. If this episode resonated with you, please share with a fellow leader or a coach. And remember, every moment of support you offer is a step toward balance. So we invite you to share your thoughts and experience in the comment section. And remember that if you want this information in Spanish, type Español in the comment section. And this has been the Exceptional Education Podcast. And through research-based practices, we empower early care and education leaders to grow strong roots, bloom with confidence, and soar with purpose.